The ballroom of the Whitmore Grand sparkled with 300 of Manhattan's elite, champagne glasses clinking, laughter echoing off marble floors. Vanessa Cole stood center stage, microphone in hand, a wicked smile playing on her lips. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's charity auction has one final item," she announced, gesturing dramatically toward the corner. "My husband." The crowd chuckled, unsure if she was joking. Ethan Cole sat frozen at their table, fork halfway to his mouth. "Come on up here, honey," Vanessa cooed, waving him forward like he was a prize pig at a county fair. He didn't move. "Fine, I'll describe him," she continued, turning back to the crowd. 38 years old, mildly employed, excellent at doing absolutely nothing with his life. Who wants this useless husband? Starting bid, $20. The room erupted in laughter. Someone shouted, $10, he's overpriced. More laughter. Vanessa beamed, soaking in the attention like sunlight. Ethan stared at his plate. 6 years of marriage, and this was what he'd become. A punchline at his wife's charity gala. $20, going once. $2 million. The room went dead silent. Every head turned. A man in a charcoal suit stood near the back, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Nobody recognized him. He hadn't been on the guest list Vanessa curated so carefully. Vanessa's smile cracked at the edges. "I'm sorry. Did you say?" $2 million, the man repeated, walking forward now, each step deliberate. "Cash. Wired tonight if you'd like." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. Vanessa's manicured hand tightened around the microphone. "This is a joke, right? A charity stunt?" Her laugh came out brittle, forced. The man reached the edge of the stage and looked past her, directly at Ethan. "No joke," he said quietly, though somehow everyone heard it. "I've been looking for him for 11 years. Ethan's fork clattered onto his plate. His face had gone pale. Vanessa's smile was completely gone now. "I don't understand. Who are you?" The stranger didn't answer her. He kept his eyes locked on Ethan and said one word, a name Ethan hadn't heard spoken aloud in over a decade. "Hello, Alexander." Ethan's hands began to shake under the table. The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Alexander. Nobody had called him that since he'd buried that name 11 years ago. Vanessa's head whipped toward him. "Alexander? Ethan, what is he talking about?" Ethan stood slowly, jaw tight. "Not here?" "No," Vanessa snapped, her public humiliation now curdling into something sharper. Fear. "Not here. You just got called a name I've never heard by a stranger who's offering $2 million for you at an auction I organized as a joke. Tell me what's happening." The stranger extended a hand toward Ethan, ignoring Vanessa entirely. "Marcus Rain. I imagine that name doesn't ring a bell either. You buried a lot when you disappeared." Ethan didn't shake his hand. "We need to talk, privately." Marcus smiled faintly. "Finally, something we agree on." Backstage, away from the murmuring crowd, Ethan rounded on him. "How did you find me?" "I never stopped looking," Marcus said. 11 years ago, you walked away from a company we built together with nothing but a duffel bag and a fake name. I always wondered why a man who was about to be worth 9 figures would vanish instead of cashing out. "You know why?" Ethan said, voice low. "I know what your father did. I know what you were running from." "What I didn't know," Marcus said, glancing toward the ballroom doors, "was that you rebuilt everything from scratch, under a different name, and married a woman who has no idea who you actually are." Ethan's stomach dropped. Vanessa doesn't know anything about my past, and it stays that way. "That," Marcus said, "might not be your choice much longer." Before Ethan could respond, Vanessa burst through the door, arms crossed, mascara slightly smudged from rage rather than tears. "We are leaving. Now!" In the car, the silence was ablaze. 20 years married to a stranger, she finally said. Who is Alexander? Someone I used to be, Ethan said flatly. It has nothing to do with you. Everything about you has to do with me, Ethan. I'm your wife. He almost laughed. 20 minutes ago, she'd auctioned him off like livestock in front of 300 people. He said nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer, Preston Cade. Call me immediately. It's about the company shares. This can't wait until morning. Ethan's blood ran cold. What? Vanessa asked, watching his face change. Nothing, he lied, sliding the phone into his pocket. But his mind was already racing. Shares. Company. The one thing Vanessa had never shown a single ounce of interest in until now. Ethan called Preston the moment Vanessa went upstairs. There's a filing at the county clerk's office, Preston said without preamble. A transfer of 12% of Colton Holdings shares, filed under your signature, dated 3 weeks ago. I didn't sign anything 3 weeks ago. I know. That's why I'm calling. The signature's a forgery. A good one. But I've seen your real one on 100 contracts. Whoever did this had access to your handwriting samples. Ethan's jaw tightened. Who's the shares being transferred to? A pause. A holding company called Harmon Vance Capital. Harmon. Todd Harmon. Vanessa's business partner. The one she'd been consulting with twice a week for the past year. Ethan hung up and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Vanessa was in the bathroom removing her earrings, unbothered, like the evening hadn't happened. 12% of my company, Ethan said, standing in the doorway. Forged into Harmon Vance Capital. Ring a bell? Vanessa's hand froze mid-motion, just for a second. Then she recovered, turning with practiced calm. I have no idea what you're talking about. Todd Harmon, Vanessa. Todd is a business consultant. 29 texts in the last week. I saw your phone light up at dinner Tuesday. Miss you already. Business consultants don't usually say that. Her face went white, then hardened. You're accusing me of forging documents because you're embarrassed that a stranger bid $2 million on you tonight and called you a name I've never heard? Maybe look at yourself before you point fingers, Alexander. The name landed exactly where she wanted it to. Ethan said nothing, turned, and walked out. Downstairs, his mother Diane was waiting in the kitchen. She'd let herself in with her spare key, as she often did uninvited. I heard what happened at that gala, she said, arms crossed. Half the city's already talking about it. Not now, Mom. I told you 11 years ago that woman had ice where her heart should be. You didn't listen then either. She studied his face. What else is wrong? Ethan exhaled. She's been forging my signature, trying to steal shares in my own company. Diane's expression didn't shift with shock, only confirmation. I knew it! His phone rang. Marcus Rain. I did some digging after we spoke, Marcus said. No greeting. Todd Harmon isn't just having an affair with your wife. He's been laundering investor money through 3 shell companies for the past 2 years. I've had a forensic accountant tracking him since spring. I just didn't know the wife in his crosshairs was married to you. Ethan gripped the counter. You're sure? I have the paper trail. And Ethan, Marcus's voice sharpened. They're not just after 12%. That filing's a test run. They're planning to take the whole company. And you. Ethan stared out the window into the dark. I want in, he said quietly. Whatever you're building against them, I want in. Marcus's tone shifted, almost pleased. Now you sound like the man I used to work with. Marcus met Ethan the next morning at a nondescript office downtown. No company logo, no receptionist. Just Marcus and 3 monitors covered in financial records. Here's what we know, Marcus said, pulling up a spreadsheet. Todd's been siphoning investor funds through Harmon Vance Capital since 2024. Vanessa's name is on 2 of the shell accounts as a silent partner. This isn't just an affair, Ethan. She's a co-conspirator. Ethan stared at the screen, at his wife's name buried in a fraud scheme. Somehow it hurt less than it should have. Maybe he'd known for a while and refused to admit it. "There's an investor gala in 10 days, Ethan said slowly. Colton Holdings' annual shareholder event. Vanessa's been pushing hard for me to make her co-signatory on the company trust before then." "That's their endgame," Marcus said. "Forge enough documentation, get her legal standing, then push through a full takeover while everyone's watching you get publicly torn down. Same move as the auction. Discredit you first, take control second." "So we let them walk into it," Ethan said, "and we expose everything live, in front of the same people who watched her humiliate me." Marcus smiled for the first time. "Now you're thinking like the man who out-negotiated 3 hostile takeovers before he turned 29. At home, Sophia sat on the stairs, 12 years old, hugging her knees, listening to her parents argue 2 rooms away. Voices sharp, words like lawyer and fraud and custody slicing through the walls. "You think I won't fight for what's mine?" Vanessa's voice, cold. "You mean what's mine?" Ethan shot back. Sophia's eyes welled up. She didn't understand the details. She only understood her family was breaking apart in real time, and nobody had told her why. She crept back to her room before either parent noticed her on the stairs. Across town, Todd Harmon paced his apartment, phone pressed to his ear. "Vanessa, he knows something. I can feel it." "He knows nothing," Vanessa snapped. "He's guessing." "Then who was that man at the auction? $2 million, Vanessa. People don't throw that kind of money around for nothing. What if he's connected to—" "Stop panicking." "I'm not panicking. I'm being smart. If this falls apart, I go to prison. You get a divorce settlement. That's not an equal risk." Silence on the line. "If I go down," Todd said quietly, "I'm not going down alone. I know things about your husband's finances that don't add up. Money moving through accounts that predate your marriage. Real money. Hidden money. Maybe it's time I found out where it's really coming from." Vanessa's grip tightened on the phone. "Don't you dare go digging into Ethan without me." "Then don't leave me exposed," Todd said, and hung up. The Colton Holdings Investor Gala filled the Whitmore Grand once again. Same chandeliers, same crowd, same marble floors that had witnessed Ethan's humiliation 10 days earlier. This time, the mood was different. Ethan stood near the stage, calm, controlled. Marcus at his side, like a silent blade. Vanessa arrived in emerald green, radiant, confident. She'd spent the last 10 days convincing herself the forged shares were already secured, that tonight was merely a formality, the public unveiling of her as co-signatory to the Colton Trust. Todd lingered near the bar, visibly on edge, eyes darting toward exits. The company's board chairman took the stage. "Before we begin tonight's presentations, Mrs. Cole has requested a brief announcement regarding recent changes to the Colton Holdings trust structure." Vanessa took the mic, smiling at the crowd like she owned the room. "Thank you. As many of you know, I've become increasingly involved in Colton Holdings operations. Tonight, I'm pleased to confirm my formal appointment as co-signatory." "Actually," Ethan said, stepping onto the stage beside her, "I think everyone deserves to see the documents first." Vanessa's smile faltered. "Ethan, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time." He nodded to Marcus, who signaled the AV technician. A large screen behind them lit up, scanned images of forged signatures, side by side with Ethan's real ones. Bank transfer records, shell company filings under Harmon Vance Capital. Gasps spread through the crowd. 12% of my shares, Ethan said, voice steady, carrying across the silent ballroom. Forged 3 weeks ago. Filed by Harmon Vance Capital, a shell company laundering investor funds for the past 2 years, co-owned silently by my wife. That's a lie, Vanessa hissed, grabbing for the microphone. Is it? Marcus stepped forward, holding up a folder. Forensic accounting report. 3 months of tracking. Wire transfers between Harmon Vance and 2 Cayman accounts. Text messages between Mr. Harmon and Mrs. Cole, discussing the timeline of this exact takeover. Todd, near the bar, had gone the color of ash. He bolted for the exit. 2 security guards, hired by Marcus for exactly this moment, intercepted him before he reached the door. "Let go of me!" Todd shouted, drawing every eye in the room. "This was her idea. She said Ethan would never notice. She said, 'Shut up, Todd!'" Vanessa screamed, all composure gone now, mascara streaking as tears of rage broke through. The room stared at her in stunned silence, the same 300 people who'd laughed when she auctioned off her useless husband 10 days earlier. She lunged toward Ethan, snatching for the microphone, screaming his name. The real one this time. "Alexander!" Security stepped between them before she could reach him. Ethan looked down at her, calm, unmoved. "It's Ethan," he said quietly. "You never even bothered to ask why I changed it." Police arrived within the hour. Marcus had made sure of that too, coordinating with federal investigators weeks in advance, once the fraud evidence was airtight. Todd was cuffed near the coat check, still shouting things that would only bury him deeper. Vanessa stood frozen center stage, 300 pairs of eyes she'd once craved now fixed on her like a verdict. "Vanessa Cole," the lead detective said, "we need you to come with us for questioning regarding fraud and forgery charges." "This is insane," she said, but her voice had lost all its earlier fire. "Ethan, tell them this is a misunderstanding." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "You called me useless in front of everyone I know. You forged my signature to steal my company. You had an affair with a man laundering investor money that belonged to people who trusted me with their savings." He shook his head slowly. "There's no misunderstanding here." She was led out through a side door, the emerald dress suddenly looking less like triumph and more like a costume stripped bare. 3 weeks later, the board unanimously reaffirmed Ethan as sole controlling owner of Colton Holdings. Investors, rather than fleeing after the scandal, doubled down, impressed by how cleanly and decisively he'd handled the exposure. Marcus was named vice chair of the board, a formal return of the partnership fractured over a decade ago. Vanessa took a plea deal, 18 months, restitution, and permanent removal from any position of financial trust. Todd got worse. His cooperation only softened the fall slightly. Diane visited Ethan's office the day the divorce was finalized, setting a mug of coffee on his desk like she used to when he was 26 and building his first company from a garage. "You did the right thing," she said. "All of it." "Feels less like victory and more like exhaustion," Ethan admitted. "That's what the right thing usually feels like." That evening, Marcus stopped by, 2 glasses of scotch in hand. "You never asked me the real reason I bid $2 million that night." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I assumed it was to make a point." "Partly." Marcus handed him a glass. "But 11 years ago, when you disappeared, you left me holding half of a company we built together, and a check for $2 million you never cashed, made out to me, with a note that just said, 'I'm sorry.' I never spent it. I just kept waiting to give it back to you, the right way when you needed it most." Ethan stared at him, throat tight. Consider us even, Marcus said quietly. Custody was never really a fight. Not once the fraud charges made Vanessa's stability legally indefensible. Ethan got primary custody of Sophia, with supervised visitation on Vanessa's side, pending her release. The hardest part wasn't the courtroom. It was the conversation after. Sophia sat across from him on the porch steps one evening, knees pulled to her chest, the same posture she'd had the night she overheard the fighting. "Is it true? What Mom did?" Ethan sat beside her. No lawyers, no board members, no audience, just his daughter. "Yes," he said simply, "it's true. Is it true you changed your name? That you were someone else before?" He nodded slowly. "A long time ago, my father did something terrible. Hurt people, stole from people. I was ashamed to carry his name, so I left it behind and built something new. I should have told you and your mother a long time ago. I was scared of what people would think." Sophia considered this with the startling clarity kids sometimes have. "Marcus knew you before, as Alexander. Marcus knew who I really was, even when I was hiding," Ethan said. "That's the difference between him and your mom. He saw me and stayed anyway." Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder. "I don't care what your name used to be. You're still just Dad." Something in Ethan's chest, tight for 11 years, finally loosened. 6 months later, Colton Holdings posted record quarterly earnings. The Gala scandal, once threatening to end everything, had instead become the origin story investors couldn't stop repeating. The quiet man who got humiliated, then rebuilt his empire in front of the very people who'd laughed at him. At a smaller, quieter dinner, no press, no crowds, Ethan raised a glass across the table to Marcus. "To being bought," Ethan said, "and getting to choose who I become after." Marcus clinked his glass against Ethan's. "To second names, and better ones." Sophia, sitting between them, rolled her eyes at the toast, but smiled anyway, the first easy smile Ethan had seen on her in months. Outside the restaurant window, the city moved on, indifferent to the storm that had passed. But inside, for the first time in over a decade, Ethan Cole, once Alexander, once auctioned for $20, once bought back for $2 million, finally felt like he belonged to himself.